The Witcher: Blood of Elves is the first book in what is now known as the Series Saga. It was first published in Poland in 1994 and is a sequel to the collections of short stories found in The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. You don't need to have read the previous two collections of short stories to understand what's going on in Blood of Elves. However, if you have read them, then the context will only help. Personally, I haven't read the collections of short stories yet at the time of writing this video. I started with the Blood of Elves simply because I ordered the series saga first without the knowledge that the short story collections came first. Rookie move, I know, but it still didn't take away from my enjoyment while reading this book. In this video, I'll be going over the entire plot point by point and doing my best to explain the many different stories and time jumps that happen throughout. I will first be giving my spoiler-free review, so if anyone was on the fence about reading the book, will have a second opinion before reading without having the plot entirely spoiled to them. This is the first video in a long-running series I will be making called The Witcher Project. If you've seen my previous video, then you'll know what this video and series is about. If not, then I'll do a quick summary of what I'm planning on doing. I plan on going over every single book in the entire series, all three of the games, as well as the Netflix show. This series will span a little over 10 videos and will be quite long in length. Unlike other reviewers out there like Joseph Anderson or Chris Davis, I will be making these videos coinciding with when I finish each book in the series and giving my opinion as I go through the series. When I finish all the books, I will upload a larger book discussion and what it means for the world of The Witcher and how it applies to the games and Netflix series. As I am quite unknown out in the world, I will first introduce myself and then move into the spoiler-free review of the book. Hello, my name is Ryan Maxwell and I like to overly analyze and critique various video games. That might sound a bit contradictory, as my first proper video on this channel is a book critique. However, this is a special exception, as the books being covered have to do with video games. I've been playing video games basically since I can remember, which to some might not be that long since I'm only 20 years old, but in this short time I've played hundreds of games that I may one day cover on this channel, with some of the standouts being Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Bloodborne, and obviously the Witcher series. If you're at all curious as to what I might be up to or just looking for updates on the videos in the works, I will have my social media links down in the description. Now for some ground rules for the channel. As of right now, I do not plan on monetizing any of my videos or starting a Patreon, GoFundMe, or whatever. This is simply a passion project of mine and I want to keep it that way unless circumstances change. Plus, I also know how irritating it is when there's a ton of ads in a long video and some just like listening to these in the background. Therefore, I won't have any annoying ads to ruin the fun. Thank you for giving me this chance to talk about what I love in too much detail. I hope each video in the series will be worth the wait, despite how long they may take. This is my commitment to quality and my promise that I will release each video when they are ready. And I will not go back on that statement, because lying is bad, right? Right? Alright, with that out of the way, let's go into my spoiler-free review of the book. Go read the damn book. Just do it. It's fantastic, and it's absolutely worth the 10 to 12 hours it takes to read. Okay, swiftly moving on. But seriously, if you're at all a fan of the Witcher games or even the Netflix series, please do yourself a favor and pick up the book and read it. Obviously, the books take place way before the games, so if you at all found some details in the games confusing, reading the books will definitely help clear up that confusion. Only just a little bit, though. If you've played the prologue of The Witcher 3, then this book covers the time Ciri spent at Kaer Morhen with the Witchers, as well as gets the ball rolling with the problem at large, which is the beginning of everyone hunting Ciri, since she is the last of the Elder Blood line from Sintra. Again, please do yourself a favor and go read the book before watching this video. It will always be here for you when you come back, and I will leave links to the books and where to buy them in the description. Okay, now starts the real critique and overview. From this point onward, consider yourself warned, as I will be going over the plot of the book point by point in too much detail. I highly recommend reading the book before watching this video, as I previously stated. If you don't want to read it or already have, this will serve as a good overview or refresher of what happens. The story begins with a short recount of the fall of the Kingdom of Sintra. If you've seen the Netflix series, this is a large part of the first episode and does a very good job of painting a visual for how devastating the attack really was. Thousands of innocent civilians were killed mercilessly by the Nilfgaardian army, and their mutilated corpses are just left all over the city streets. During the attack, many of the noblemen and women committed suicide before Nilfgaard was able to break into the castle. They would rather poison themselves to death, so they would not have to face the brutality of the soldiers. Also, as a side note, a lot of the names in the Witcher series are very weird, and I don't really know how to pronounce quite a few of them, so if I pronounce them wrong, I apologize. I'm really trying to pronounce these correctly. Anyways, Most notably, the Queen of Sintra, Calanthe, has been mortally wounded and also commits suicide after sending her granddaughter, Princess Cyrilla, to escape from the Burning Kingdom. Ciri is able to flee the city, but not without being completely scarred for life, seeing mutilated and burning corpses of innocent people on the way out of the city. Ciri also recounts that the guard tasked with helping her escape the city is shot and killed with an arrow behind her, his blood being spilled all over her. Her memory of what happens next is quite foggy, and all she can remember is a specific black knight with feathers on his helmet doing something to her. What exactly he does is not made clear, and then Ciri proceeds to wake up from her nightmare next to Geralt. Geralt, as many of you know, is one of the main protagonists of the story and the main playable character in the games. He is a Witcher, which is a regular human that has been transformed into a mutated monster slayer for hire with supernatural abilities. Geralt has a few distinct physical features, those being his white hair and cat-like eyes. Most call him the Butcher of Blaviken or White Wolf on account of his white hair. Following Ciri waking up from her dream, and after a short little bit of dialogue, we switch perspectives for the first time to Dandelion, a bard who is considered to be Geralt's best friend of all time. For those who have seen the Netflix series, Dandelion is the same character as Jaskier. Personally, I like the name Jaskier better than Dandelion, but for clarification's sakes, I will be referring to him as Dandelion for the remainder of the series. Just keep in the back of your mind, if I mention the Netflix show, that these characters are one and the same. I also just mentioned that this is the first perspective change, and I specified that because there is a shitload of them throughout the book. No, really, there's like 4 or 5 each chapter. It can be really confusing sometimes. Anyway, this shift to Dandelion introduces us to some of the other races in the world of The Witcher, and we are also shown how racism goes around in this world. After arguing with each other about the truth in Dandelion's famous ballads about Geralt, they begin to argue about the different races and how they all hate each other. Humans hate non-humans, and vice versa. More particularly, humans hate dwarves and elves since they inhabited the land before them. However, dwarves also hate the elves for starting their own gang called the Scoia'tael. I guess maybe they wanted to be a part of the gang and got left out because they weren't really tall enough to, according to some sign, like those you see at amusement parks to get on a roller coaster. Either way, this part of Chapter 1 is mainly used to introduce the fact that nobody really likes each other in this world, and they all have sticks up their asses about each other. We're also introduced to the Scoia'tael. They're pretty important too. During said arguments, Dandelion slips away and ends up in a brothel in a nearby village, which, if you've played the games, is not at all surprising. While he's with one of the girls, he's rudely interrupted by a stranger that goes by the name of Rience. Rience starts asking Dandelion a lot of suspicious questions that lead to Dandelion attempting to flee through a secret passage in the brothel's rooms. This symbolizes one of two things. Either Sapkowski couldn't really find out a way to narratively add a chase sequence, or Dandelion just gets into trouble so often that the brothel built him his own secret passage in the building. Regardless, Dandelion is captured and hung upside down in a stable of sorts. Rience continues to ask him questions about Geralt and Ciri, to which Dandelion says he doesn't know anything. Suddenly, Yennefer of Vengerberg barges in to save Dandelion. This will not be the last time Dandelion needs saving. For those unaware, Yennefer of Vengerberg is a sorceress and member of the Chapter of Wizards. She is also an on-again, off-again lover of Geralt's. After some discussion about Geralt and Ciri's whereabouts, Yennefer and Dandelion part ways. Right at the end of the chapter, we switch back to Geralt's perspective, where both he and Ciri have arrived at the famous Witcher school, Kaer Morhen. Here we are introduced to a few other Witchers that call Kaer Morhen home. These new Witchers are Eskel, Lambert, Vesemir, and Cohen. I think that's how you say his name? Cohen? There's 2 dots over the O. I don't know how you say that. Anyways, these guys will play a much more important role later on in the series. For now, Geralt introduces them all to Ciri and tells them that she is their destiny. This concludes the first chapter of the book. Chapter 2 starts when Triss Merigold of Maribor is traveling towards the Witcher School of Kaer Morhen. Quite a bit of time has passed from the end of Chapter 1, where Geralt and Ciri first arrive at Kaer Morhen, as when Triss first shows up there, she sees Ciri running an obstacle course of sorts. The Witchers of Kaer Morhen call this course the Killer, mainly due to the fact that some Witchers in training died while running the course. Ciri takes quite a tumble while running the course, and Triss goes over to help. Ciri is quite shy and reserved, as she hasn't met Triss before, but eventually warms up to her after Triss heals her wounds, and the two make their way back to Kaer Morhen together. While on the way back to Kaer Morhen, Triss figures out that Ciri is a source, which is someone born with a natural affinity for magic that is hard to control, and can sometimes lead to mental illnesses like Catriona if not taught how to control it. Once they return to Kaer Morhen, Triss is greeted by the Witchers, but she really only cares about Geralt. If you haven't played the games or read any of the books, both Triss and Yennefer have a thing for Geralt, yet the two are also best friends with each other. This is quite the complicated love triangle that will only get increasingly complicated as time goes on, especially when we get to the games and Geralt loses his memory. Good lord, is that a shit show. After some catching up and drinks, Triss talks with Ciri and finds out that she's had her first period, and the Witchers have done nothing to help her out with that. Triss then scolds the Witchers for not taking care of her and being more attentive to the fact that Ciri is a girl that is starting puberty. I don't know why, but this scene always reminded me of that one episode of King of the Hill where Connie has her first period and Hank has no idea what to do and has to go down the forbidden aisle of sorts. But anyways, from here on out, the Witchers agree to a system where they postpone Ciri's training if she's wearing a dress. This system is put in place mainly to relieve some of the awkwardness surrounding the whole situation. Over time, Triss becomes increasingly curious about the different things the Witchers give Ciri to eat. She goes out of her way to find out what the mushrooms and juices really are, and Lambert gets quite irritated with her. During a discussion, the topic of white gull's hallucinogenic effects and how it does something very strange to Ciri is brought up. Triss gets very curious about this as well and decides the only way to figure out what's happening is to try and communicate with Ciri while she's in one of those trances of sorts. So they give Ciri some white gull, and she starts one of the trances. As Triss tries to communicate with her, she's pretty much locked out of her mind by some mysterious entity. Not really sure what exactly that was. This could be a hint about how powerful Ciri really is, and that she's more than just a regular source. She's something completely special. Continuing on, Triss eventually starts teaching Ciri some of the Elder speech, and receives her first real sword. Once springtime hits, Geralt, Triss, and Ciri leave Kaer Morhen and start heading to the Temple of Melitel? The Temple of Melitel is a school for sorcerers and sorceresses, where Ciri will begin studying magic so she doesn't develop a mental illness from not knowing how to control her abilities. While on the way there, Triss gets sick with a mysterious illness and is pretty much knocked out of commission for a while. Conveniently, the group runs into a dwarven company that is guarding a caravan for King Henselt. This dwarven company is led by Yarpen Zigrin, who appears to be an old acquaintance of Geralt's. Zigrin agrees to allow Geralt, Triss, and Ciri to tag along with the caravan until Triss recovers from her illness. During their travels, there's lots of talks about the impending war with the Scoia'tael and which side is the right side. Geralt and Zigrin have a conversation about such a war and what side they would both take. While Zigrin is a non-human, he is quite conflicted as to which side he would take, mainly due to the fact that he's a dwarf that works for humans and has been treated equally among them. This conversation ends up turning into an argument when Geralt declares that he's very neutral on the subject and that he doesn't want to get involved in the war and would just sit back and watch. After said argument, Ciri decides that she wants to scout the forest ahead in case of any Scoia'tael ambush waiting for them, and does so against Geralt's wishes. While she's scouting ahead, she naturally comes across a group of elves hiding and sneaking around in the forest. Being scared that the elves would kill her on sight, Ciri does her best to hide from them and stumbles onto an old elven ruin. Geralt catches up to Ciri and the two explore the elven ruins. While exploring, the two come across an old statue of Elaren? I think that's how you say it. And Geralt explains that Elaren was an elf that died while leading elven youth into a war against humans. Ever since that war, the elves have looked at Elaren with both honor and anger. Elaren was a symbol of strength for the elves, but they also were angered because Elaren led many of the elven youth into their own deaths. The elves are understandably angered by this, since young elves are only able to reproduce, and since many of them died in the war, the elves have dwindled in numbers. This scene really helps to explain why the Scoia'tael are doing what they're doing, and why there's a war going on between humans and non-humans. This just goes to show that the war between humans and non-humans has been going on for a very long time. It was caused by humans landing on the continent and then taking over a lot of the land that the elves used to inhabit. This story reminds me a lot of American history and when the explorers first landed on America and were in conflict with the Native Americans. I don't know if this reference or parallel was intentional, but it's still interesting to look at nonetheless. Going back to the story, during the conversation that Geralt and Ciri are having, they notice a fire off in the distance. Both of them realize that the fire is coming from the caravan, and they immediately rush back to find that it's been ambushed by the Scoia'tael. Geralt ends up helping the dwarves fend off the elves in order to protect Ciri and Triss. Many die on both sides, including some of Zigrin's family. After the battle was over, it's discovered that the escort mission his company was on was a trap set by King Henselt, who doubted Zigrin's loyalty. We then shift to the Hag Castle in the Pontar Valley, where the rulers from all over Temeria discuss what to do about the Nilfgaardian army that is camped at the bank of the Yaruga River. Despite being convinced earlier that Ciri was killed in the fall of Sintra, the Temerian rulers decide that they should still search for her and, if found, have her killed for matters of state. Other plans are discussed during this meeting, such as getting the chapter of wizards on board to flank the Nilfgaardian army, but not much else was achieved during this meeting. Later, Emir von Emrys, the Emperor of Nilfgaard, is informed about this secret meeting, and he tells the governor to inform the chapter of the secret meeting. He also orders Rience to quietly murder Geralt, hide, and then wait for further orders. He also orders that Rience be sure to not harm Yennefer. Not quite sure why, but still, nonetheless, not to harm her. Sometime later, we see Ciri dreaming of Geralt and some others on their way to find Rience. However, she is awoken by an argument between Yennefer and Nenneke about the way Ciri is being treated. Nenneke, the school's head advisor, scolds Yennefer for the way she treats Ciri. Ciri also still has nightmares about the fall of Sintra, but these end once Yennefer starts training her in magic. Over time, the two's relationship goes from student to teacher to more of a stronger and deeper bond, almost to the level of mother and daughter relationship. While Ciri is training in magic, Geralt is out tracking Rience and the person who hired him. His adventures lead him to the school in Oxenfurt, where he reconnects with both Dandelion and Shani. Shani is a medical student at Oxenfurt and an old friend of Geralt's. However, there are signs of there possibly being a past relationship between them. The biggest sign of this past relationship is that Dandelion barges in on them having sex. It's really quite a funny moment, since Dandelion enters the room through a window, not realizing what was going on until he was looking at both of them naked on the bed. Both Geralt and Shani seem to be quite annoyed with Dandelion, for obvious reasons. However, they understand why he came through the window once he explained that he was being followed all throughout the town. They are then visited by a mage named Philippa Eilhart, who gives them information about Rience and what his intentions are. While she gives them information about Rience, Philippa shouldn't be trusted, as she also has ulterior motives and goals of her own. While Philippa can be helpful from time to time throughout the series, it should always be noted that whenever she shows up, something mysterious or something else is going on that has to do with her finding out information for someone else. Eventually, Geralt tracks down Rience and gets into a fight with both him and the Michelet brothers. I think that's how you say their name. That's how I'm going to say it from now on, but anyways. The Michelet brothers are just a group of assassins Rience hired to help with fighting Geralt. Unfortunately for them, they decided to pick a fight with the worst person possible, and it would ultimately cost them their lives. During the fight, Geralt easily takes on all 5 of them at once and kills 3 of the 4 Michelet brothers and also injures Rience. At the last second before Geralt is able to kill Rience, a magical portal opens up and he escapes partially with the help of Philippa. She prevents Geralt from killing Rience and also kills the remaining assassin in order to prevent Geralt from gaining any more information about Rience and what he's planning. Philippa then leaves Geralt behind and Shani helps tend to his wounds. This is the last time we see Geralt before the next book. As I said prior, whenever Philippa shows up, there's always something else going on, and this really just proves it, because while she knows that Geralt really wants to kill Rience for trying to track down Ciri, mainly because she has another mission that she's trying to fulfill for someone else. What this mission really is won't become apparent until the second book, but either way, it's still set in motion in the first book. Once again, we switch back to Ciri and Yennefer, as the two have grown close together and treat each other like family. Eventually, they would decide it would be better if Ciri left Melitel, as she was being hunted down by both empires. Before they leave the school, Yennefer asks Ciri if she didn't like her at first. This leads to a different series of flashbacks that show impactful moments during their training that really strengthened their relationship. These flashbacks range from the first day the two met up to just as they were about to leave the school. Ciri answers Yennefer's question by telling her that she didn't like her at first, but over time her feelings quickly changed as they got to know each other. After this, the two leave the school late at night, and this ends the first book. All in all, there really wasn't much that happened in the first book. It was more of just setting up the world and everyone starting to get to know the characters, especially Ciri, and how she starts learning magic and why she's so important to the world. We're also introduced to the concepts of racism and the war between humans and the Scoia'tael, something that will continually pop up for the rest of the series and even carry on into the games. While the Scoia'tael aren't present in The Witcher 3, I can't say personally that they are in either the first or second game, as I have yet to finish them. I finished the third one, but I'm still working on the first one. Hopefully by the time the next video comes out, I should have finished the first game and be working through my way on the second game. I don't know how long those will take, mainly just because The Witcher 3 took me around 115 hours to finish my first playthrough. This length might not be surprising to some people, simply because there's so much stuff to do in The Witcher 3. The game is absolutely packed full of content, and the 2 DLCs are absolutely fantastic. A little bit of a side note, I was a bit of a dunce when it came to reading the books in order. I didn't realize that the Ciri Saga came after the short stories, so if anything in this video was confusing, like you didn't know who the characters were, if you've never heard of The Witcher before, or anything of that sort, it might be a little bit more confusing simply because the short stories really introduce Geralt and some of the other characters and their backstories, how they met, and why they're important to each other. Once I make my video on the short stories, things will probably be a little bit more clear, and then I would recommend that you'd watch those first before this video, but like I said, I'm an absolute dunce and forgot that those books came beforehand. But either way, I'll be doing the Ciri Saga first, and then covering the short stories after I finish the first 5 books. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the story and what you heard in this video, I highly recommend you read the book yourself, as there are so many little details I didn't go over in the book that absolutely make it worth reading. Unfortunately, I was also an idiot when it came to writing down notes for each chapter, so I had to go off of memory with some reminders online here and there. When it comes to remembering some of the smaller details and events that happened in the book, I don't have the best memory, but with the next video, it should be much better, mainly just because I've already started taking notes on it as I've been going through it, and there won't be any inconsistencies, hopefully. I also just want to apologize for this video being released a bit later than anticipated. I ended up having to record the audio all over again as the file got corrupted right as I was about to finish editing the video. As for when the next video in this series will be released, I'm not going to give a set time frame this time. I'm shooting for it to be out by the end of March, however, it could very well come out earlier or later. I plan on releasing a smaller video in between these ones, reviewing both Little Nightmares 1 and 2. That one should hopefully be out in the coming weeks since both games are quite short. If anyone is interested, I'll be streaming my playthroughs over on Twitch of those games sometime soon. The link to my Twitch channel as well as my other social medias will be in the description down below. Again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch or listen to this video. It really means a lot to me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was worth the wait. I'll see you guys next time.